Hey guys, Ali here. It's been a while. In this tutorial, we are going to take a look at this. It's actually a video from my Patreon, a tutorial from my Patreon. This effect has been going popular lately, especially the past month. So I decided why not make this tutorial accessible for everyone. So yeah, this is like a promotion for my lessons as well. So if you find this helpful, you can definitely get into my Patreon and learn the things that are actually not available anywhere else. I know I say this a lot, but there's actually things that are not available anywhere else. So you're not going to regret anything. So anyway, let's get into it. Alright, so this is the first visual that I'm gonna teach you how to make completely from nothing. You may have seen this video I did for Armor visuals a while back, and it was pretty fun to come up with this idea. It was simple though, but it looks appealing to the eye. And these are some shots I took from the original video I did for Armor. And this is just to tell you that we are going to start from state 1 and state 2 and then state 3. It will just give you a clear idea that what you have to go for. Like we can go straight into the video, but we will just have a reference to look for. Okay, now when you cannot come up with anything, many people find it hard. I would advise you to just start with a simple solid, like I'm doing here. And not gonna go with completely white, just a little bit of off-white. And you can just start by adding some text to it. And that's it. Like, to get an idea, your mind first have to be in the vibe. If you just expect it to come up with visuals while seeing nothing on the display, then it will find hard to come up with any idea. Doesn't just go with video editing, literally doing anything. Okay, so I'm just doing the same thing here with the text that we did a while back, and I kind of like doing this thing with the text. It's been going on for a while. Okay, so first we have to add a text in state 1, and then we will add another solid, and this solid will be a little bit darker than the actual solid, than the background solid. Something like this. Okay, now I will put it down. Okay, now let's put it down and scale it down a bit, like so. Let's open the scale for the solid and make sure to unlink the scale. Then add a key and then go back and just make it a little bit smaller. We want it to scale up as soon as the scene comes in. Just apply some easing to the keyframes. And by the way, these are the composition settings. Since we don't have a spokesperson video in this, so I will, instead of using a posterized time effect on my animation, I will just lower the FPS, because low FPS means a fast preview. And when we use a posterized time instead, posterized time may seem like a simple effect, but it's actually quite heavy effect because it's cutting down the FPS in real time. So it takes a while to load, kind of heavy on your CPU. Alright, now here I will put the text preset that we made in the video. And I actually forgot while I was doing so, I ended up making the animation myself of the text, and I forgot that I had a preset all along. So anyway, I will just set the text like so. First I will just get done with the text, and later we can focus on making the paper effect. I will just fast forward this process because I think you already know what I'm going to do, since we have covered this inside that tiny text tutorial. It's exactly the same thing, just some text, some typography, and some effects on the text. Now we will put the paper image on the timeline. I actually don't have the PNG file, I just found it on Google. First I will put a fill effect on my solid, because in case if I want to modify it, I don't have to go to the solid settings. Instead, I can just use the fill effect and just be done with it. Okay, now let's pre-compose the paper. So it looks like this. Scale it up a tiny bit, and then I will zoom in and use this point of interest tool and make a shape around it. This is not an actual shape, this is just a bounding box. And then go to composition and then crop the composition to the region of interest. And now to eliminate the black background on the paper, you just have to put an unmult effect on your paper. You can find many unmult effects and presets on the internet, and the unmult effect is available for free on the Red Giant website. You can just download it, or you can just use a PNG file instead, and it will save you from this step. I should have done that to begin with. I don't know why I didn't do it. Okay, from this point I will type out some text, and this is just, it's not going to have a part inside of animation. It will act as a design itself. Okay, so I will just type out some text, for example, guideline 1, guideline 2, guideline, and so on and so forth. Have fun with doing. You can even put a sketch onto this paper. And now for the highlight effect, I will just add a simple shape like this. Make sure there's no outline on this. Now I will add some keys to the scale. First, let's put its anchor point on this point, and now scale it down like so. And it should look like this. Okay, now to give it an organic feel, first I will put a twirl effect to it. We'll just make it a little bit sway, or if that's the word. Just like this. And now to make it a little bit rough, we will put a roughen edges effect to it and set it to cut. Just tweak some settings like so until you find something that looks good to you. And by the way, this quick tutorial is also available on my Instagram highlight if you want to check it out, and you can check it out as well. It's a separate tiny tutorial, super fast to do it. Okay, I think this looks convincing, like a brush stroke effect. I'm not gonna go too much detailed into it. I think it looks good the way it is. And yes, okay, now it looks good. And let's set it to linear burn blending mode. This is how it looks. Okay, now let's head back to the main composition, and this is how it should look. And I think we're getting close to it. And first, I don't like the red color a lot in this, so let's set it to like a cyan tone or something. This looks good, I think. Let's make it a little bit more saturated. Okay. Now there's a tiny detail, if you may have noticed, that when the highlight comes on the word guideline, instead of turning black, it turns to white. So how can we make that? It's pretty simple. You just have to find the layer that is going to be highlighted, then duplicate it and put it above everything and set its color to white. Then duplicate the shape, put it above and set its blending mode to normal mode, and now set the text to alpha matte mode, and this is how it should look like. If you're using the latest versions of After Effects, then your alpha matte mode should look a little bit different than mine, but it's not too hard to get. Also, this step was optional, you don't really have to do it. Okay, now let's head back to the main comp, and I will just tweak the BG shade a little bit. I think white doesn't look too good. And this is how it looks. If your design looks good on its own, then I can assure you that the animation will look good as well. So you just have to focus on making the design and don't worry about the animation. When you're getting started, don't worry about the animation, just focus on making the design look good first. And now we will make the most anticipated animation when I made it, so it will be the page flapping effect. For this I will put a CC page turn effect to my paper and set this to none. When you set it to none, you can pick a shade. For example, I'm picking this cyan or turquoise shade. And using this point, you can move how you want it to behave. A little trick I did here in the actual video was I added a wiggle code to this point. You can hold Alt and click this stopwatch and type wiggle, and just give it any value. You just have to experiment with it. Let's go with 5 by 7 or so, 70 or so. Yes, this looks good. Okay, now you know how it was made. You can still adjust a point. If you think you want it to move some other way, you can still do that. And I got a lot of positive feedback on this video when people saw it. Like, most of them were saying that this scene kind of looks a little bit realistic. Now you may ask, what makes the actual scene looks so realistic? From my experience as a painter, because I also do paintings and I learned it from learning paintings, that when you're going to achieve some kind of realism, what you have to do, you have to make everything little less saturated, a little less popping. That's the word. Okay, now here I will show you a quick example of what I mean. For example, see, I have this photo of nature on my Photoshop. It's not actually Photoshop, it's Photopea. But I want you to look at this. I want you to look at this color panel. Look at this spot. This spot is being hit by the light, and also this spot as well. And light is coming from this direction, and this and this and this, and so on. So the point of telling you all this information is that when we hear about light, we always assume the colors between white popping colors. But see, when I color pick these exact spots that are being hit by the light, see what it gives us on the color panel. Let's see. See how dark that the color looks. And now let's color pick this spot that's also being hit by the light. And as you can see, it's almost to the black, but it still feels like that is being hit by the light. And if I color pick the light rays, you can see they are not too popping as well. And if I pick out the fog, you can see that as well. So the point is, it's all about the contrast. For example, if your scene is a little bit dark to begin with, then the light will also be a little bit darker. This will give the realistic feel. Otherwise, it will just feel like a cartoon. When you work while having that information in your head that I just showed, it will help you make the scene look eye candy and a little bit a combination of cartoon and a realistic effect. For example, look at this paper. It looks like a cartoonish thing. So what I will do, I will just go inside the paper and put a curves effect to it and make it a little bit dark and make it lose some color. And when we head back, this is how it should look. Now we are halfway done. It doesn't look realistic at all. It will look good when we follow the nature. Okay, now what else does nature have? Nature have less saturated colors, and nature also have some shadows, cast shadows. So to make a cast shadow, I will just simply duplicate the paper and name it as shadow and put it behind this paper and delete the CC page turn effect from it. Instead, put a color balance effect to it and make it black. Then turn down the opacity a tiny bit. And then put a Gaussian blur effect to it to make it a little bit blurry. Just a tiny bit. And now we will put a Bezier warp effect between the Gaussian blur effect and the color balance effect. Now this effect will be used to make the shadow flap as well. Down and move it down like so, just a little bit. And you can just animate any option. For example, I am picking this point. So when you're moving this point, you have to notice what value is moving on your effect control panel. In my case, this value is moving on my effect control panel. So I will simply hold Alt and click this stopwatch and apply the wiggle code that we did for the CC page turn effect. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Nice, but I don't like the way it moves, so I will simply edit the value or just do anything that needs some tweaking. You can even put the point on a different location or just tweak the value or apply the wiggle code to some other point. Doesn't have to be exact, it already looks good as is. So anyway, we are good to go. Okay, now we will make the paper tearing effect. It's quite easy. It seems a little complex, but it's quite easy to do. For this, what I will do, I will select the both layers, the paper and the shadow, and hit Ctrl-Shift-D to split them into two parts. And simply move them above like this. And now what I will do, I will select the paper and make a mask like this. Something like this. Actually, I will just invert the mask, select these points and put them above. And just copy the mask like so and paste it on the shadow layer as well. And now you will have to do some tweaking. Just stretch these handles to make a shadow look like a cast shadow. Since we want a little bit more motion in this, a little bit motion in this, so I will select another handle and look for the value that is moving when I move this handle. I think this one, so I will just apply the wiggle code to it as well. And now we'll head to the paper, look for the CC patient effect, click it and put this point where you feel like it gives a realistic fold, just like so. Yes, I think it looks good. And now we have to make the tone paper effect, which is easier than you think. Okay, let's duplicate both of them, Ctrl D, and put them above. This will be the tone paper. And let's just rename the layers so we know what layer is what. For this, you simply have to invert the mask like this. Just take this point and move it at the bottom, and this as well. And now let's tweak the CC patient effect on this. And I think we don't need the shadow layer, so I will just delete it and we will make a separate shadow. Nice, and then we will take this anchor point and move it on the corner. And now I will open rotation and add a key, move it back, and then make it rotate like this. And apply some easing to the keys. This is how it should look. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Now I will open position as well. Make it go out of the scene. Like if you want to, you can also open the scale. You just have to make it go out of the scene. I think we don't need any kind of easing on the keys. We'll just leave them as they are. And now let's duplicate this layer, Ctrl D. And this is going to be the new shadow. And first I will name it as shadow and then move it behind like so. And copy the shadow effects from the other shadows, paste it on this so it looks like a shadow as well. Turn down the opacity and turn up the Gaussian blur effect a tiny bit. And actually the shadow depends on where the light is coming from, and in the original video I made a mistake. As you can notice that the light is coming from the right side, but the shadow is also going to the right side, while shadow should be facing toward the left side if the light's direction is strong. And all there's to do now is to type out some text that we didn't do before and type something else. So it's just a text, so I will just fast forward this, and after this we will move forward to doing that windows and light shadow effect. Alright, now add a new solid. This solid is going to be a shadow. And set the blending mode to multiply. And you can also put a fill effect to it, so you can tweak the colors more efficiently. Now using the pen tool, I will make a mask like this. Hit M and invert the mask. And now I will add another mask. And subtract the mask like this. And now put a Gaussian blur effect to it. And now duplicate it. And this is going to be the light effect. And first I will turn off the effects on this and then open mask and uninvert the mask and set both of them to add. And change the blending mode to change the color to something else and set the blending mode to lighten. When you turn on the effects, this is how it should look like. And also scale it up a tiny bit, like so. By doing this, you will give it a Terminator shadow. And what is a Terminator shadow? It is when the light and shadow collide together. This transitioning point of light and shadow, it oftentimes turn into an outline or something brownish tone. As you can see on the ball on the left hand and on the right hand, the shadow has a little bit of a brownish tone to it. When the light is transitioning to the shadow, look up for this on the internet to have a better explanation on this. But it plays a huge part in giving a realistic effect. And instead of setting the blending mode to lighten, I will set it to the lighter color. On lighten blending mode, it looks a little too intense, while on lighter color, it looks a little more controlled. I almost forgot to put a thumb pin, so here it is. Let's put it on the timeline. As you can see, it also have a black background to it, so you can use a PNG file to begin with, but I didn't think it when I was making it. So I will just put a unmelt effect to it to get rid of the black BG, and also put an HLS effect to it to play with the shading. And no special thing is needed to do with the pen. You can just put it like this and leave it and forget it. And just duplicate the pen, and it is going to have a shadow as well. Now just rotate the pen like so. And make it black. Let's turn down the opacity of this shadow. And if you want to, you can also make a mask, so it gives a feeling of shadow being faded away as soon as it gets further from the object. And at this point, I noticed that I have been making the shadows on the opposite direction of the light. Because the light is coming from the right side, so the shadow should fall on the left side instead of falling on the same direction. So to fix it, it's quite simple. We'll just have to invert the light source and the shadow. I think it's going to be the scaling that we have to invert, like this. But I'm not gonna lie, that light looks good when it comes from the right side. It doesn't look that much good on the left side, for just weird reason. If we were to tweak the shadows of the objects, it's gonna be a headache, so let's just settle with this. Alright, now let's move forward to making the camera. Right click and add a new camera. And you don't have to tweak any settings, just keep the default settings. Also put it above. And then add a new null object. And convert the null object to a 3D object as well, and attach the camera to it. And now we will select the layers like this that we want to convert to a 3D object. And enable 3D on them. Except for the light and shadow layers for now. Okay, now I will switch the view to a custom view where I can see it like this and push this shape a little bit back and pull this text a little bit forward. And pull this tone paper a little bit towards the camera. And now let's head back to the active view. Okay, now open the position of your null object, add a key, move it forward, and then turn down the value to add another key. Put them a little bit close like so, and then move forward just a little and increase the value. It will add a zoom effect. And then go in the middle of this cut. Move this key somewhere along the cut and increase the value a little bit more to add another key. And now increase the value a little bit more to keep the zoom going on. Okay, now I think I will turn down the value of the first key a little bit more because I want that commercial kind of zoom effect. I know you may have seen that. I don't know how to explain it, but this is how it looks. And the best thing about it is that it does not use any kind of easy easing on the keys. Okay, so here's an example of what's going on. The object starts from no value and jumps to a higher value like this, and then it goes to even higher value, just a tiny higher value than this, until it gets to this next key. And when it gets there, it's like a spike in speed to get to the next key, which is also put close together. I don't know if that made sense, but I think the visual representation is good enough to give you the idea of what's going on. And just a fun little thing, if you move the rotation of the null object, if you want to play with it, you can also do that. Look at this, how cool it looks. Okay, now I will add a new adjustment layer at the top of the camera. And I'm going to call it as hit. And then put a minimax effect to it. And then set it to maximum to minimum, maximum then minimum. Set it to only horizontal or vertical. And then cut the layer like this. And you just have to put this impact hit on the points that you think it will look good, on the transitioning points. It's just a tiny effect, but I think it makes a huge difference to the overall movement. You don't have to put the minimax effect to it, just the minimax effect to it. You can literally put any effect like invert effect or a glow effect. Any effect that you think will look good to it. And now I will enable the motion blur on all these layers that are going to be animated, and turn on the main motion blur switch as well. And then add another adjustment, and I'm going to call it shake impact, and put a transform effect to it. And after that I will put a slider control effect to it. And hold Alt and click on the stopwatch next to position and type the wiggle code. After the comma, you have to attach it to the slider. And then open the slider and add a key. And then go on this cut, add another key, and then put some value to it, and another key when it goes back to none. Something like this. So as you can see, the movement now has some impact. And lastly, you can add another adjustment and call it curves. And put a curves effect to it. I think we don't need to do any kind of color correction, any further color correction to it. It already looks good as is. So still, if you want to tweak it, you can do it however you want. But I think I'm going to leave it as is. And that's it. This is the final result. I do hope you enjoyed this class, and there is more to come, even more exciting things. As you can see, it will all be done inside of After Effects, and using the most basic tools and things, we will make the most complex looking visuals. I hope you enjoyed this class, and don't forget to download the file and the presets, and I will be back soon. Thank you so much for watching. Till then, goodbye.